whether it has a happy ending or not, there's some kind of romance in it. So people who don't like romance, they're lying. So it's emotion. Lust and attraction are not enough. Romance is love. So it's different from writing other works because the reader wants to be taken on a journey through the character's eyes, through the point of view of that character, rather than somebody saying, I had an opening of a book that my critique partner, I'm writing the Evil Stepmother story. And the opening of the book was something like, Cinderella, Queen of Chalmers, had one daughter. That's not a very good opening. She's like, I changed it. So I had to fix it because that's not pulling the reader in. It's just telling you, instead of opening it up with the daughter saying, but I'm going to be 6 and 10 in 3 months. And she's like trying to hold back a grin. That is more like her feeling what's happening rather than telling the reader what they should feel, which is annoying for readers. For me, I like to feel like they pull me in and I can't put the book down. So the first thing for romance is a good hook and opening. So I'm going to read you some opening lines of books, very famous books, and tell me which ones that you would pull you in and say, oh, that's kind of funny, or that sounds interesting. The first line of the book, one line. My mother drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. Any idea? Why?
Yeah.
When I wake up, the other side of the bed is cold. Got it.
What?
Good job. Hunger Games. Gwendolyn was 9 years old the day she almost killed the future chieftain of Clan McCullough. You won't know that one. It's The Bride and the Beast, Teresa Medeiros. If it had not been horribly obvious that Chester Brady was already dead, Lydia Smith might have strangled him herself. That's a good hook.
It is.
That's After Dark, Jane Castle. She's also Amanda Quick, Jane Ann Krantz, one of my favorites. The day Kevin Tucker nearly killed her, Molly Somerville swore off unrequited love forever. That's a good one. Susan Elizabeth Phillips, His Heart Is Mine. I scowl with frustration at myself in the mirror. No takers? 50 Shades of Grey.
No.
That's how that book reads. Okay, so I want you to write a sentence. What do you think would be a good sentence? Opening sentence. So take a second, write it down, and let's see who's brave enough to read it.
Right. Are we aiming for the romance genre?
A hook. It doesn't matter what the genre is, really. It's the first thing that's going to make the reader go, oh, this is cool, and keep reading. I have one story that I started with a critique partner, and the first sentence is whack. That's the sentence. What you got?
I watched his smile fade to a frown as he gazed into the face of the child.
Nice. What else?
I'll share. The plumes of dust whirled around the child huddled against the crumbling wall.
Pretty.
Very good.
You?
If love big enough, how will you know it's there?
Right.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Probably gonna give you an example of one that was not good. Anna took a sip of the drink Dork handed her, unaware he had slipped her a Mickey.
But see, that grabs you right there. Al?
A stranger came up from behind and startled me to nearly fall off the deck of the ship.
Thank you.
I don't want a woman to come home to, I want a woman that can't leave home without.
Oh.
Oh, that's our poet.
You have something? No? I have nothing. Okay, any other ones? Okay, so, also really important in genre fiction is showing versus telling. Here's an example. Angry, she walked to the door. That's telling. Here's showing. She strode to the door, flung it open, eyes glittering with fury. Telling, she went home in a bad mood. Showing, she stalked home, hands jammed in her pockets, angrily kicking rocks, dogs, small children, anything else that crossed her path. Now you try it. I'm going to give you a sentence, and you are going to make it show, not tell. So I'm telling you, my brother is talented. Okay, what you got?
He stood on stage and sang his heart out. I was awestruck. Wow, my brother is talented.
Who else?
Roger plays the guitar, making the strings sing.
Okay.
The crowd cheered as my brother broadly smiled after finishing his song.
Good.
Eyes rolled within me as I watched my brother save the man's life.
Nice. Very good. Different kind of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And that sentence shows it's not just the artistic level. Very good.
Looking at the book jacket in his hand, I was proud of my brother's skills.
Okay. Another one. Anybody else? Okay. That's very important in genre fiction, is showing. That brings the reader along, and it's still part of that journey through the character's eyes. So dialogue rather than prose, to get a point across that moves the story forward. You don't want something like, "Hi, how are you? I'm fine, how are you?" It's useless, right? Here's an example of moving the story forward with dialogue, and this is from This Heart of Mine, the one that had the opening sentence of, "The day Kevin Tucker nearly killed her, Molly Somerville swore off unrequited love forever." It's one of my favorite books. So, this is the dialogue. "Oh no, Molly, not again." The consternation in her sister's voice had Molly wishing she'd worn a hat. "Relax, will you? Nothing's gonna happen." "How can I relax? Every time you do something drastic to your hair, we have an incident." "I outgrew incidents a long time ago," Molly sniffed. So what have we learned in this exchange?
She done something to her hair.
Right. Molly did something drastic to her hair. And every time she does, there's an incident. And if you read the story, when she was in high school, and did something to her hair, she pulls the fire alarm and it's a second-degree felony. I mean, it's just an example of what she did. If Ms. Phillips had started with the actual incident, she would have had to give us what is called backstory to tell us that every time Molly changed her hair, there was an incident. Whereas in this exchange, Molly's sister took us through several incidents to show us something big is about to set this story in high gear. So that is key. She's dyed her hair red, some crazy color, and everybody's going, oh no. And she's like, no, it's fine. But you know every time. And she sets it up very well. It also shows another aspect of genre writing, showing versus telling. She's shown us that in just the snip, and she's going, no, you don't have to worry about me. And her sister's freaking out, going, oh no, we need to be prepared. She has the reader viewing the situation through the character's eyes rather than telling us what the characters mean. And that's what you can do with dialogue, and it's really important. So pacing. Pacing has to move fast enough to keep the reader interested, but steady enough to let the reader breathe. I was reading a book a long time ago, and my friend Mary Jo, she writes very tight, very high tension stuff. And then she loves these books, and she would send emails going, you've got to get this book by Anna Campbell, and I would get it, and then I'm reading, I'm going, oh my gosh. This thing was so tense that some part in it, the girl grinned, and I'm like, where did that come from? It just did not feel right. So it has to pull back and let the reader go, okay, and then that's your pacing. You want to set them up and you go, oh. Points of view. Genre fiction is very important points of view. And there's two schools. The noun norm is to have a scene or a chapter in one character's point of view. But then you have the old school people who write, switch it in the paragraph. Nora Roberts does this. But she can. She's allowed. I don't care for that kind of writing because I have to go back and reread who's thinking this, or and that drives me crazy. So ideally, the point of view is in one character's point of view the whole time. And it's kind of interesting because you can shift to a next scene, even doing the same thing, showing from their point of view. So I think that point of view is real important. So you have to think about the reader in that case because you don't want to lose them. Because once they're lost, they can set that book down. And there's a lot of writers out there, and you don't want them setting their book down. Conflict. Conflict must be believable. They should be convincing and important to the characters. And I have this book that I've read about 4 times. I love the conflict. The setup is unbelievable. It's called The Wedding Favor by Kara Conway. And basically, it opens in a courtroom. And the hero's wife was in a coma from a drunk driver. And then I guess the insurance company was trying to put a price on the value of her life. And the opposing attorney is as cool as a cucumber. She's got her suit on, her hair tight, back, and she won't even look at him. And it's set in Houston, and the story kind of takes place, I'm getting sidetracked. Anyway, so after court, he wins. He goes to his condo that he has during this trial, takes his suit off, stuffs it in a trash compactor, because he's done with that. And his attorney is hitting on him, and he's thinking, yeah, I could, but I got to go to Paris. And she goes, that's not that far. He's at Paris, France, not Paris, Texas. So he gets on a plane to go to a wedding, his friend's wedding. Well, when he gets on the plane, he's running late, somebody's in his seat, first class, leaning down, a girl with long blonde hair that he hadn't seen her. He sits down and he tells the stewardess, just bring the Jack Daniels every hour. Because he's gone through hell with this trial, because it's about his wife, who's dead. And when she sits up, it's that attorney. She's headed to not Paris, but another town in France for her brother's wedding. Well, what his best friend didn't tell him, is a woman, she's marrying the brother. So the setup is just incredible. So he's got this attorney he hates, but she has these issues with her mother. So she gets the best friend asks him, please, can you just, treat her nice and keep her out of her mother's path and this, that. Well, when they walk in and they see each other, they're like, he can't tell her that he hates this woman and that she's the attorney on the opposing side. It's just a fantastic setup. It's a really good conflict, very good conflict. Because you've got internal and external. So in his internal conflict in this case is that he believes that his wife woke up in that coma and said, honey, you gotta let me go. I love you, but you can't live like this. Pull the plug. Well, when he's on the stand, on the trial, she asks, are you sure you didn't dream it? That's guilt, too. He's feeling just tremendous guilt because he's not sure if he dreamed it or not, and it just really hits a sensitive spot. So that's your internal conflict, and it's huge, huge. So the external conflict would be after 8 years, and he's fighting the insurance company. The external would be with that attorney because he hates her. So, and then he's stuck in this situation. He doesn't want to hurt his friend's feelings, so then they fall in love, and it's a great story. So romance readers are very picky. I'm the first to say that. They don't want to be spoon-fed or treated as if they don't get it. I'm reading a book now. It's awful. I just don't even know why I'm still reading it. It's just like constantly telling me, and I'm like, okay, I get it. It's
time after time,
yeah.
repeat.
And you don't want the plot in this particular book is not very good. The guy is a male courtesan. It's a regency, and I'm just like, really? And the girl is just what we call in romance TSTL. You know what that means?
Yes. I do, but I'm cheating. I know you.
Too stupid to live. She is so dumb. I can't believe this book. The heroine must be believable, and the hero irresistible. This does not mean a character without flaws. Your characters do have to have flaws. Romance readers want true to life, but there is a rule in romance, and that rule is that you have to have a happy ending. That's a rule. Another thing in romance is heat levels for your audience. They vary from sweet to erotic and in between. So you have to pick, you have to decide who your audience is. Like, we have these contests. The OKRWA does a contest called the IDA. And we need 1 billion judges because we had a really good year. So if anybody's interested, talk to me later. But one of the OKRWA members, you might have heard of her, Linda Goodnight. She's an inspirational romance writer. So she is going to put the note out, but her readers, you can't. I once had the Cinderella series reviewed by a Christian journal magazine. Well, she hammered me because these are sweet romance, but they're not inspirational, and that's what she was expecting. And she didn't, it's set in the 1790s. You didn't drink water, you drink wine. She didn't like that. She didn't like the castle grounds, each pond on the castle grounds has a mythical god, Zeus, and Hermes, and just different. And she wrote in there, she said, well, if you can, there's some drinking and some mythical gods involved. If you like that sort of thing, you'll probably like this. That's what she wrote. And I
Wow.
was like, wow. I was just like, oh, okay. But somebody else from that same paper or that magazine interviewed me and said they were great and she was going to be watching for my stuff. So it was really interesting. So, heat level is important. You want to base on your audience. But romance is also very important. You have to have sexual tension. That doesn't mean sex. You have to have sexual tension, and what that means is you have to have that attraction between the hero and heroine, or it's not a romance. So, let's see. Emotion. That's the most important theme in romance. Emotion. You have to convince the reader that they love each other. And what I said in the beginning, lust and attraction are not not in a romance novel. You have to come away believing it's going to last forever. And Vivian mentioned romantic suspense. So another thing too is the subgenre you're going to be writing in romance. Is it, what period is it? Is it, if it's historical, you've got a real big range. You know, you have the medieval, you have Regency, you have Civil War, you have World War II, anything. We've got vintage now. We've got the Martini Club. This is set in the 20s. So that's historical, but it's vintage. We kind of consider that. And so then you've got your contemporary. This is kind of interesting. So you have contemporary suspense, romantic comedy, paranormal. You have historical suspense, romantic comedy, the era, paranormal. You can have contemporary, historical, fantasy, futuristic, young adult, all over the place. Contemporary, historical, etc. So you see my drift. So you kind of have to decide where your book would fit on the shelf in the bookstore when you're considering what genre, subgenre you're going to be trying to write. And these are some pitfalls to watch when you're writing. And I think this is true for anything, but specifically genre fiction. Your characters must be motivated in some way to behave how they do. You want them to have a reason for, I mean, they could be nuts, but, you know, an example is like love at first sight. That has to be really convincing because it doesn't really happen. I have a book that is A Marriage of Convenience. It's contemporary. That's really difficult to do. But here's the byline. Would a modern woman marry for convenience to protect the identity of her child? So I think you would. And that worked. If your characters are going to fall in love after meeting a minute later, you better have a plausible reason to show the reader, or they will just lay the book down and pick up another, because there's a lot of them out there. So here's an example. Love at first sight. Perhaps they've been communicating, like, what's that movie, You've Got Mail? You know, that's an example. Through letters, historical, through email, contemporary, through metaphysical, paranormal, just ideas. Characters cannot be too stupid to live. This is key. So here's these are some of the tropes that a lot of romances say, but, and these are kind of, to me, kind of come in and play with harlequins, because they are the category how would you write that? So take a minute and just pick one of these. And here's on the Fake It Till You Make It, I have an example of the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Did you see that? It's like one of my favorite. It just cracks me up. I mean, the motivation on both sides is so great. And it's just like the perfect fake it till you make it. So pick one of these: Secret Baby, Opposites, Second Chance, Friends to Lovers, Fake It Till You Make It, or Forbidden. That'd be like Romeo and Juliet. And what would you write in the paragraph, just to kind of... It's hard.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
There's certain types of romances, standards, that fit into categories. Or like this Lies That Bind is an example of second chance. The couple knew each other years before, something happens, she disappears for 5 years. I'm going to read you the opening sentence of this, maybe the first scene, because it's kind of, okay, so they've known each other before, but here's the opening of this book. Are you going to be my dad? What? Hell no. Caught by surprise, those were the first words that popped out of Alex Gentry's genius mouth. The juvenile standing before him had wild, dark, curly hair and a mouth covered in bright red lipstick, almost neon embarrassment, colored outside the lines, no less. His gaze narrowed at the sight. The child appeared female based on her oversized, frilly pink dress, a dress that didn't quite match her bright purple pants, which were 3 times too big on her tiny feet. Hands fisted at non-existent hips blocked his entrance.
Another example of what?
That's an example of, this would be a second chance. So they worked together 5 years before. Something happened. She disappears. 5 years later, he needs her help on something. He knocks at the door, and this kid answers the door and says, "Are you going to be my dad?"
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Turns out it is his dad, is that what you're saying?
No. She's asking, the kid is asking him, "Are you going to be my dad?" And he's just freaking out going,
I think
hell
that's
no.
I'm not.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what I have.
All right, you want me to try one?
Yes.
What does he, Tracy muttered as she watched the man demand attention at the desk, thinks he's too important to stand in line like the normal people?
So what's that example
Of dislike, immediate dislike,
Oh,
and,
okay.
Like opposites, maybe
Opposite.
not opposites, but yeah.
you know, it's a,
You're creating the conflict,
mhm.
going, well, why is...
At first,
she's
they,
saying that?
they want nothing to do with each other, but then,
is? So you would say that a lot of times when you're reading romance, you can pretty much guess the ending? I mean, you know,
Well,
just how they get there, you don't know, but
yeah,
That's about
exactly.
it. That's about
Exactly.
it.
I mean, a romance is determined, I mean, Romance Writers of America defines romance as a satisfying ending. But it kept, well, I will tell you that I had an editor appointment one time. This is so awful. It was awful. I was writing Quotable, and it wasn't finished, and I went ahead and had this appointment with the Harlequin editor. And she said, "So, how does it end?" I said, "Oh, well, obviously the hero and heroine get together." And she goes, "Oh, well, thank you very much." I'm not kidding. Yeah, oh yeah, it was harsh. I was like, okay.
yeah.
It was hard. So you've got to, that's not what she wanted to hear. She wanted to know,
So you were pitching a book that wasn't
was
finished.
it finished?
that's always not good to do.
If you know how it ends, you can pitch it.
Some people know exactly how it's going to end, before they ever start actually putting it down.
Yeah, they wanna know how they're gonna overcome those
Mhm.
obstacles in order to get together.
Yeah,
They don't wanna just know that they're gonna get together, that's
Yes.
a given.
And that's what she was asking,
yeah,
the details leading up to the happy ending.
correct.
Where's the twist in it that'd make me want to read it?
And that's believable.
It must be
It
believable.
has to be believable.
That's one thing I'll make me
Romance
put a book
novels are
down.
not the I mean, some of them are, but I don't think those are very good ones. I mean, you have to make it believable. I love reading romance. I love
And
writing romance.
there are some out there that you read it, but that's with any genre, any type book. You read and you say, oh dear, let me read a little longer to see if it gets better, and then you finally say, forget it, there's wasted money.
Lost the reader because
Yeah.
it's not believable.
Have to put
And
it
I
through
won't,
it.
and I won't read that author again.
That's key. I mean,
That's right.
that's a personality, your voice coming through the pages. I think that is one of the biggest things about romance is the personality that comes through the pages.
Have you
Would
read,
you-
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
did you read, oh, who was it? Oh my goodness, I know her name, Deborah.
Judy.
Deborah?
Jude Deborah,
Uh-huh. She said that the politically correct people are now interfering with the writing of romance novels by saying that they cannot have a moment of passion without the, I'm thinking, but yet they accepted 50 Shades of Grey, you know, that the heroine has to be able to think and make a definite decision. Yes, I'm going to. I mean, you know, and she gave an example of they're in bed, they wake up, you know, they're sleepily, and they, you know, reach for each other. She says, how in the world in that kind of situation are you going to have a character thinking, all right, do I really want to do this or do I not want to do this? And I just about lost it. But I mean, that's just what I read from her just yesterday.
Huh.
So I'm like, okay.
so Eva, you had a question?
Well, but like Danielle Steele, though, is she a romance writer?
She's
So
more
formula.
epic. I think at one time she was considered romance. I don't consider her stuff
She's
romance.
more contemporary.
I think she writes big world, long, drawn out. I don't know. I used to read her. I don't.
Yeah.
It's just very what?
Well, I was
Formula.
gonna say, and like Nicholas Sparks, his seldom end happily ever after. So in general, I don't know necessarily that happily ever after is a requirement in romance, but in RWA, and I think that most romance readers expect that. Most romance readers are disappointed if the couple is not together at the end of the book. But someone who reads Nicholas Sparks doesn't expect that because they know
Yeah.
they might not get that. And someone who reads Danielle Steele
And
doesn't expect that.
that's a good point too. I was talking to Amanda last night about this, and she said it's expectations, different expectations, considering what you're reading. You know, if you're going to pick up a historical fiction, it's not necessarily going to have a happy ending. But if you're touting it as romance, then yes, it's supposed to have a happy ending.
Well, I know I had a book turned down because it wasn't happily ever after ending because this woman, the whole theme of the book was overcoming traumatic things. You pick up the pieces and rebuild your life and go on, or you shrivel up and die. You know, I mean, that's your choice when something traumatic happens.
But are you pitching it as a romance?
No, I wasn't. But the publisher sat back and said, no, most readers want a happy ending. Well, the thing of it is, her children had been stolen. And so she had to rebuild her life. And she didn't think she was going to be able to, but she does. And then she remarries, and she's standing at the window of the hospital waiting for her husband to pick her and the baby up. And she's talking to the baby, telling out there, you have a brother and a sister. And you may not be able to meet them, but you will know them, because I will tell you all about them. and her husband comes up and puts his arms around her and says, we both will. We will both make them happy.
Inspirational.
Huh?
Inspirational.
Yeah, and they said,
That
no.
sounds happy.
Well,
I mean, it was
no,
a
really
satisfying,
it
it
is.
sounded like a satisfying
Right.
ending,
Uh-huh.
but because you didn't
Right.
find other kids or something, is that why?
Yes, they said we want all the loose threads, and I'm going,
Oh.
Well, I have
that's
a-
not believable.
Right.
I do have a book coming out at the,
Hmm?
a different publishing company
Well,
might love that.
You know, it's published now, but, you know, it's one of those things that had to be,
Happy instead of satisfying. for that
well,
person.
you know, the thing of it is, it really was based on reality. And there are a lot of people out there that still have children missing and they don't know what happened to them or where they are. But they can either live in that grief and misery and never have a life, or they can say, okay, I've got to find a way to go on. And, I mean, that's what the book was
Sometimes
about.
you don't always get the answers that you,
No.
you know, so.
I have
Besides
a
that,
fourth
now we
book
have a
coming out on
sequel.
the Cinderella series that is the evil stepmother story. And that tells you right there it's not gonna be a happy ending.
No.
She's the evil stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
So
And it's not a romance.
And it's
so.
not a romance, but it does follow in this, so, and these are romance, so that's my audience. So I'm a little worried,
Mhm.
but there's no way you can make, it had to be written.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't she
So-
become not evil at the end?
Well, how
Yeah.
could that be if
It's a prequel to the
it's
series.
a prequel to the
Oh.
series? We know how
Oh,
she
right,
is,
right, right.
so we,
That wasn't
you
what-
can't
How,
make
Right,
why,
okay.
and whatever.
I see what you're saying.
What led up to her being like that?
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Can this rule about the happy ever after ending maybe be different if, you know, right from the beginning it's a trilogy or anything like that? Can that change the way the first two stories ends?
If it's well written, you know what? Most readers will accept whatever is there if it is well written enough.
Well,
Usually.
would you clarify what your question for me? What do you mean?
You know, I'm thinking of, well, I'm thinking right now of the Twilight series. I'm not sure the first book had a happy ending. I think it almost let you know, move on to the next book. But and I'm thinking there are other books like that I've read too, but I can't think of the name of one. I don't know.
Are you saying the book does not stand on its own as a single story?
Especially in Twilight, the second book doesn't stand on its own at all. You feel like the writer just said, oh, this is too big, or the editor said, cut it right here and move on to the next book.
That does happen. It really does happen.
That's,
But also, I don't
I'm
think you
wondering if
could
that's kind of
really,
acceptable or
I
not.
don't think you can really consider Twilight as romance.
I don't think so either.
That's the difference.
If you're pitching it to a traditional publisher, Kensington or HarperCollins or whatever, you have to know, if it's romance, you're gonna have to know their requirements. So if you're pitching it as a romance and it doesn't have a happy ending, it would get rejected.
And as far as like trilogies that sort of are to be continued type, that's kind of been a source of discussion and kind of a sore spot because some readers get really annoyed. It's like, oh, so I have to buy the second book or the third book or whatever. So the best, but once they become big like that, they can get by with it. You know, like in the 50 Shades of Grey stuff, they know that there's stories are going to be continued for however long. But what you need to try to do is give a certain amount of resolution and satisfaction in the first book for whatever that conflict and storyline is. And
But you
then
would
you
have-
can leave a few loose threads that will be picked up, but not important loose threads.
right, right.
So it can't